The Armored Assault Tank, or AAT, was the workhorse of the droid armies. Manufactured by Bactoid Armor Workshop and became the most recognizable vehicle in the Separatist arsenal, for good reason. Coming in at just 9.19 meters in length, it lacked size but made up for it in firepower and versatility, with a straightforward but brutally effective design. A heavily armored lower hull topped with a rotating turret that rained down laser fire on anything in its path. What made the AAT special compared to Republic tanks was its repulsor lift propulsion system that allowed it to hover above the ground at speeds up to 55 kilometers per hour, letting it traverse nearly any terrain, desert, swamp, urban streets, without the vulnerability of exposed legs, while the hovering system gave it surprising agility for something so heavily armed, making it perfect for hit-and-run tactics or escorting larger droid formations. The AAT's main weapon was the MX-8 artillery laser cannon, mounted on its rotating turret and operated by a droid gunner. Powerful enough to punch through Republic armor and elevated to engage incoming aircraft, while for support, it carried twin blaster cannons and side-mounted projectile launchers loaded with guided missiles, with armor plating composed of durasteel several inches thick in key areas that made it resistant to direct hits from standard blaster rifles, though its underbelly was surprisingly vulnerable, a weakness Republic commanders learned to exploit. The crew typically consisted of 2 or 3 droid operators, a pilot controlling the repulsor systems and navigation, and a gunner managing the turret and primary weapons, with some variants able to carry up to 6 additional droids or 10 tons of cargo. And its 1-week battery capacity meant extended operational periods without resupply, though many AATs docked at C-9979 landing craft for ammunition replenishment and repairs. The AAT saw service from the invasion of Naboo all the way through the end of the Clone Wars in 19 BBY, appearing at nearly every major Separatist engagement, including Christophsis, Geonosis, and Kashyyyk, with its combination of speed, firepower, and reliability, making it the CIS's primary infantry support vehicle. That even after the Clone Wars saw the Empire adopting similar designs, while some Separatist holdouts kept their AATs operational for decades, proving that the AAT was simply the tank that worked, and the Separatists built thousands of them. The IG-227 Hailfire-class droid tank, or as most people call it, the wheel droid, was something completely different from the AAT, purpose-built for one job: destroying enemy vehicles, and manufactured by Hayor Chal Engineering for the Intergalactic Banking Clan. Easily identified by its massive hoop-like wheels measuring 8.5 meters in diameter, these droids stood 8.5 meters tall and were built around a central armored command module suspended between 2 enormous wheels, essentially functioning as a mobile missile platform on steroids, with its most distinctive feature being the twin racks of long-range missile launchers mounted on either side of its head, each rack carrying 15 guided warheads capable of destroying a Republic ATTE Walker or crippling an armored column in single strikes. The missiles followed evasive, swerving trajectories with impressive range, spanning several kilometers in ideal conditions, making them devastating against stationary targets, while for close-range defense, it carried twin autoblasters mounted forward that provided protection when missiles ran dry. Though this represented a significant tactical weakness, since once it depleted its 30 missiles, the Hailfire was forced to retreat for resupply. The Hailfire droid was an integrated combat unit, capable of operating autonomously with its own droid brain, though it could also be directly controlled by a pilot if needed. And those massive wheels could propel it across flat ground or even shallow water at impressive velocity, making it far more mobile than most other CIS tanks, with its red photoreceptor capable of locking onto targets at great distances and significantly extending its effective range compared to standard blaster weapons. However, the Hailfire had a critical flaw rooted in its specialization. Because it relied on guided missiles with limited ammunition, it had to be carefully managed in battles, making it less of a frontline tank and more of a specialized platform for surgical strikes against heavy armor. The Hailfire droids saw action at several major engagements, including the Battle of Geonosis, where they advanced alongside OG-9 homing spider droids in terrifying formations. Though despite their devastating potential, the Hailfire droids saw relatively limited deployment because of their ammunition limitations and the logistical challenges of keeping them supplied in extended campaigns, eventually being phased out in favor of the more reliable Persuader-class tank. The Multi-Troop Transport, or MTT, was a heavily armored repulsor lift vehicle manufactured by Bactoid Armor Workshop for the Trade Federation and later the Confederacy of Independent Systems, designed to transport B-1 series battle droids as a massive, lumbering vehicle with a vaguely elephantine silhouette featuring a hulking forward hull and sloping front end that made it instantly recognizable on any battlefield. Measuring 35.94 meters in length and standing 10.45 meters tall, the MTT was considered simultaneously a troop carrier, tank, and siege ram, moving at a maximum speed of 31 kilometers per hour, with a pair of forward-mounted anti-personnel twin blaster cannons for defense, while its true innovation lay in its hydraulically powered droid deployment rack that carried 112 deactivated B-1 series battle droids, or a maximum of 12 B-2 series super battle droids, depending on configuration. To deploy its soldiers, the MTT would cease movement, open its massive hatch, and extend the deployment rack, where droids were quickly activated into combat formation, with one variant capable of dropping droids from several meters to fall into battle-ready configuration for more rapid deployment, creating an instant infantry force in moments. The MTT saw extensive deployment during the invasion of Naboo, where 33 transports assisted in occupying Theed and participated in the Battle of the Great Grass Plains, where they proved devastatingly effective when Gungan deflector shields blocked AAT fire by allowing B-1 droids to walk through the energy wall and engage enemies directly. During the Clone Wars, MTTs became a critical component of Separatist assault doctrine, typically supported by phalanxes of armored assault tanks that cleared the path ahead, with transports deployed from C-9979 landing craft in groups of 11, and seeing action across numerous battlefields throughout the conflict, proving their value as both troop transports and siege weapons. The Heavy Artillery Gun, or HAG, was one of the Separatists' most devastating mobile weapons platforms, a massive self-propelled artillery system manufactured by Bactoid Armor Workshop that brought unprecedented firepower to CIS ground forces through long-range bombardment capabilities unavailable to most other Separatist vehicles. Standing approximately 12 meters tall and stretching over 18 meters in length, the HAG was essentially a mobile fortress built around an enormous plasma cannon capable of firing supercharged energy bolts that could obliterate fortifications, destroy armored columns, or level entire structures with single shots, with the weapon's range extending several kilometers under ideal conditions, making it a strategic asset for siege operations and large-scale battles. The HAG featured an extensive fire control system, including advanced targeting computers, range-finding lasers, and automated targeting algorithms that allowed it to engage distant targets with remarkable accuracy, while its fire control droid could coordinate with other Separatist units to prioritize targets and adjust fire based on battlefield conditions, making it exponentially more effective than simple direct-fire weapons in coordinated military operations. What set the HAG apart from dedicated anti-tank vehicles was its role as mobile artillery rather than a frontline combat platform, meaning it was positioned far behind friendly lines, where its elevated firing arc and long range allowed it to rain destruction on Republic positions without exposing itself to direct counterfire, operating much like Republic artillery pieces, but with far greater mobility thanks to its repulsor lift propulsion system, allowing speeds up to 40 kilometers per hour. The HAG's primary vulnerability was its complete lack of close-in defense capability and slow traverse rate for its main cannon, meaning that if enemy forces penetrated its defensive perimeter or attacked from unexpected angles, the platform had minimal capacity to defend itself, necessitating protection from dedicated combat vehicles like AATs and Hailfire droids positioned around deployed artillery batteries. The HAG saw deployment at major siege operations, including the Battle of Ryloth, where it bombarded Republic positions, and at Geonosis, where it provided devastating fire support during critical phases of the conflict. Though its strategic value as a siege weapon meant it appeared primarily in extended campaigns rather than rapid mobile engagements, with most HAGs positioned in prepared positions and fortified gun emplacements rather than advancing with mobile droid formations. After the Clone Wars ended, the Empire captured or destroyed most HAG platforms, though a few examples were retained for Imperial use, and some surviving units were encountered by Rebel forces during the Galactic Civil War, where their long-range firepower proved problematic for small Rebel task forces, making the HAG remembered as one of the most formidable Separatist weapons platforms, despite its limited mobility and defensive weaknesses. The NR-N99 Persuader-class droid enforcer, nicknamed the Snail Tank for its distinctive profile and slug-like locomotion, represented a different philosophy entirely. Originally designed by the Techno Union for debt collection and intimidation purposes, before the Clone Wars erupted and the Separatists repurposed thousands of these tanks for military service. Standing roughly 6 meters tall, it featured a massive central tread for primary locomotion, supplemented by forward-mounted outrigger wheels on pontoon threads for stability and traction, with the entire upper section containing the weapon systems, including ion cannons, heavy repeating blasters, and concussion missile launchers, arranged in a fixed forward-facing configuration, while infantry soldiers could even ride on the outrigger wheels, giving it limited troop transport capability alongside its combat role. What made the Persuader dangerous was its versatility, moving at 60 kilometers per hour to match its intended speed profile, while its design allowed it to function through virtually any terrain, most notably crossing water and operating fully submersible, which opened up tactical options unavailable to many other droid tanks and created opportunities for surprise assaults from unexpected directions. The Persuader was also impressively well armored, with heat exchange panels and reinforced plating protecting its critical systems, though it had significant vulnerabilities stemming from its original purpose of intimidation rather than warfare, particularly its completely unprotected tracks that made it susceptible to anti-tank attacks from the front, its high-profile turret arrangement that left it exposed to aircraft in elevated positions, and its forward-facing weaponry that meant it struggled against threats from the flanks or rear. Still, the Separatists deployed these tanks in overwhelming numbers, appearing at virtually every major Clone Wars engagement and filling a critical niche in the CIS arsenal as a tank destroyer capable of engaging both infantry and heavy armor, operating in coordinated units that could suppress enemy positions while supporting lighter vehicles like the AAT. After the Clone Wars ended, some examples fell into Rebel hands and saw service during the Galactic Civil War, proving the tank's longevity and effectiveness across different eras of conflict. The Separatist supertank prototype was a vehicle that existed in such limited numbers that most clone troopers never encountered it. Commissioned by the Confederacy and manufactured by Bactoid Armor Workshop as a potential game-changer for the war effort, essentially representing what would happen if the CIS decided to build a heavy tank that could shrug off any anti-tank weapon in the Republic arsenal. The supertank was absolutely massive, a heavily armored fortress on treads, with its defining feature being its ray-shielded armor, which could deflect concentrated laser fire from ATTE walkers and even AV-7 anti-vehicle cannons, with standard blaster weapons proving entirely ineffective against it, making it nearly impervious to conventional infantry anti-tank tactics that worked against other Separatist vehicles. The tank's primary armament consisted of twin laser cannons mounted on either side of the main turret, supplemented by twin rotating laser turrets for area defense, and most devastatingly, a concealed twin concussion warhead launcher capable of destroying enemy walkers in a single barrage with enough destructive force to level fortifications or vaporize armored columns. However, the supertank had a critical vulnerability rooted in its design philosophy. Because the devastating warhead launcher was concealed beneath retractable armor plating, the tank had to expose itself to use its most powerful armament, a tactical weakness that proved absolutely critical at the Second Battle of Geonosis, where roughly 20 supertanks were deployed from a Separatist factory and Republic AV-7 artillery cannons opened fire. And while individual shots bounced harmlessly off the ray shields, sustained bombardment forced the tanks to retaliate. And when they opened their armor plating to launch warheads, Jedi infiltrators like Ahsoka Tano exploited the exposed points, systematically destroying the experimental platforms. Only about 20 super tanks were ever manufactured, all at the Geonosis production facility. And during the Second Battle of Geonosis, all of them were destroyed. Most cast into the chasm surrounding the factory, and one destroyed in the factory's collapse, ending the experiment entirely. As while the super tank proved remarkably durable and its weapons devastated Republic forces, the combination of limited production capacity, extreme cost, and tactical vulnerabilities made it impractical to continue development. The super tank remains one of the most formidable-looking vehicles in the entire Clone Wars conflict, and many fans speculate that if the Separatists had produced more of them earlier in the war, they might have shifted the balance, though logistics and resources simply didn't permit mass production. And by the time the factory completed the first batch, Republic commanders had already learned counter-tactics that rendered the experimental platform vulnerable despite its impressive armor and firepower.